Hello YouTube, this is AndrewTheRed. So this is going to be February 2013 new books. I've got here, let's see, I would say about at least 20, well probably more than that, probably 30. 30 books. I actually was just at the store today and got a few, like maybe 3 or 4. I have here fiction, maybe mostly fiction, and I've got here economics and some random ones and a big art book too. So I'm going to start with the big art book. How about that? So it's called Lost Paradise, Symbolist Europe. It's a big giant art book, and it had a lot of neat stuff in it. It was very inexpensive and nice color photos. Oh, the glare. So let me show you a few more though. I thought it was pretty interesting. Some really strange stuff too. That kind of stuff. This book was, I guess, printed based off the Montreal Museum of Art. So that's where it comes from. Anyways, thought I'd start with that one. Okay, next I'm actually going to do some books I received. I joined a book club called Laissez-Faire Books, lfb.org. I think I might have mentioned that in a previous video. And for joining, they sent me some free books, and I'll go through those first. So I didn't actually order these, but these came for free. So the first one, they get better, believe me, they get better. This first one is called, it's a little tiny book called Hack Your Showerhead, plus 10 other ways to get government out of your home. Jeffrey Tucker is the guy that runs the Laissez-Faire books. I don't know. This is just random stuff in it. Yeah. Next little one. They're not all little, but the other little one is Bastiat's The Law. That's nice. That's useful. That'll be good. I have another by Bastiat that I got from the Mises Institute. You might remember, a bigger one. They sent me a copy of Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson. So that's a great one to have. Now I have 2 copies of it. But that's an amazing book for introduction to economics, and it gives you the essentials, really, that anyone really should know about economics. So it's a great one. Here's A Tiger by the Tail by Hayek and Schon. I don't really know what this is about. I guess it's about inflation. So it's not that popular out of a book from Hayek. Usually when people talk about Hayek, it's either talk about The Fatal Conceit or they talk about The Road to Serfdom. But this one is about inflation, I guess. And inflation is the tiger. And I think it's about, if we grab the tiger by the tail, it still will come and bite us. So if we try to control inflation, we still will inevitably lose, but we still have to deal with the tiger, I guess. So that's that one. And here is A Bubble That Broke the World. This one's by Garrett, and it is about, the book was actually originally published in 1932, just about in the middle of the Great Depression. And that's what The Bubble That Broke the World is. And I guess this was Garrett's, he was first on the scene to suggest, hey, this is the Federal Reserve and been screwing us this entire time. That is not a typical explanation of the Great Depression, though often you hear about it's some other reason. It's not the Federal Reserve. But the Austrian School of Economics would beg to differ. So, okay, now the books I did order from LFB. And these are, here's the first one, Liberalism by Mises. It's a hardcover. A green, I'm not sure why. So just another Mises book on liberalism. Here's Andrew Bernstein's Capitalism Unbound, the incontestable moral case for individual rights. It is not often that you see a case made for capitalism by using morality. most people say that capitalism is mean or harsh, a harsh society. But some argue that it is certainly not. And this would be one of them, Andrew Bernstein. But also, you can, I believe it's still online, you can look for a debate on YouTube between Peikoff and Ridpath versus a couple socialists. I'm trying to think what their names were now. I'm probably not going to remember. But it's a debate that happened in 1984, and I think it's still on YouTube. And that debate's title was Capitalism or Socialism, which is the moral system? So to argue for morality is an entirely different argument, because you can argue about you can argue about capitalism and socialism as which one is better for the populace, which one has more, which one employs more, or which one has a higher standard of living, those kinds of things. But which one is more ethical? That's an entirely different discussion. Here's Hayek's The Fatal Conceit, The Errors of Socialism. I believe this book talks about the what's that phrase Hayek uses? I guess it's the fatal conceit, but it's all the pretense of knowledge. Socialism, for it to work, you have to be omniscient. You have to have all the information in terms of prices and in terms of supply and demand, what people want. If you don't have all that information, you inevitably end up with poverty and resources that are not efficiently distributed. Capitalism is the best system to efficiently distribute resources, meaning that you put money and you put resources like wood or iron and things like that. You put those commodities where they are most needed, and that is defined by who will pay the highest price for them. So if people aren't making a lot of money making fridges, and with, let's say the steel that's in the fridges, people aren't making a lot of money on that, and so they don't have a lot of money to pay for steel. But if cars are making tons of money, and they'll pay a higher price for cars, that steel is far better used in making cars. So that's just one example of where resources are being used. If you have a communist country or a socialist country, and the leaders just say, no, iron, the fridge industry gets 10 tons of iron a month or something, or a year, and the car industry gets 10 tons of steel. Then if the fridge company is making products that aren't really much in demand, and the car companies burn the steel up, and then they can't make any more cars, then you've got a problem, because you've got tons of fridges, extra fridges that nobody wants, and you've got a big hole in the car industry, and because there's not enough cars being produced. So what does that do? So it'll be a big argument against socialism, because it's just impossible. That's one line anyways. Here is one on education that I wanted, the 12-year sentence. Radical views of compulsory schooling. It's funny actually, I had this book from the library already, I was reading it, and I saw it on the LFB website, and I was like, oh sweet, I'll just order one. And it was at a reasonable price. It's got Rothbard in here, and it's got E.G. West. He's got some decent stuff on the history of schooling. I've got a book behind me about the onset of Prussian schooling. It's called Education and the State, a Study in Political Economy. That's also by E.G. West. All right, so that's that one. And I've been meaning to get this for a long time, but it's always been so expensive on Amazon. There's Milton Friedman's Capitalism and Freedom. For some reason, this book has been so expensive, and yet it's really not that big. But LFB had a good price for it. And because I was a member, I got 20% off. So it was a good price to get off of them. So finally I got a copy of this. It says 14th anniversary edition. Milton Friedman is an amazing economist, at least for getting that information out to the public in a manageable form. You may know about his TV series called Free to Choose. I would look that up. That was also a book, by the way. Although apparently the TV show existed before the book. I have the book and I've read it. It's a great book. as well as check out the TV show. I think you can get it online, on YouTube, I mean. Just look for Free to Choose, and I think there was 10 episodes in season 1. They talk about an issue in economics. Milton Friedman often is like in another country. He's talking about Japan or talking about India or whatever, and he's right there and showing you it. And then the last 20 minutes or so, they have a circle debate, and Milton Friedman's there, and they invite a bunch of other people to talk about the issue. So there'll be other professors there, there'll be government there. There's a few big names that show up to some of the debates too. What was the mayor of was it the mayor of New York? I'm trying to think now what his name is. So I just looked it up on the Wikipedia page for Free to Choose, and Donald Rumsfeld, you should know who that is, was in one of the episodes as a debater, and Thomas Sowell's there, and he's in many of them, Thomas Sowell, and the other person was Walter Williams. He's another free market guy. Okay. Oh, there's one more. I didn't order this from the website, but it's in economics, so. The Mystery of Capital. Why Capitalism Triumphs in the West and Fails Everywhere Else, by Hernando de Soto. Reminds me of a colonization Continental Congress guy, de Soto. So this is supposed to be a really good book, looking at the world and its social systems that are adopted. So this will be a great one to get into. It says here, it is in strong opposition to the popular view that success is determined by cultural differences. De Soto finds that what creates capital in the West is a process buried deep in the legal structure of its property systems. Yes. Okay, now how about I'll leave the fiction till the end? And next I will do the random stuff. Drinking some tea, by the way. I usually do when I'm reading books anyways. Against the Gods, I just found this today. The remarkable story of risk. This is a book I've been looking to get, and I found it for cheap in a used bookstore. So that was a great find today. It's by Peter L. Bernstein, 1996. And it was about, there's a good quote on the back here. So it says on the jacket, the flap, I guess, it says here, Bernstein argues that the notion of bringing risk under control is one of the great central ideas that distinguishes modern times from the more distant past. It says it reads like a novel, chronicles the remarkable intellectual adventure that liberated humanity from the oracles and soothsayers by means of the powerful tools of risk management that are available to us today. It says here, it's a richly woven tale of Greek philosophers and Arab mathematicians, of merchants and scientists, gamblers and philosophers, world-renowned intellects and obscure but inspired amateurs who helped discover the modern methods of putting the future at the service of the present, replacing helplessness before the fates with choice and decision. So, that'll be a good one. That'll be great. This one I also found today. And the Fed by Ron Paul. Here's a picture of him on the back. Isn't that great? So, of course, the End the Fed means the Federal Reserve, because there's many arguments made by the Austrian School of Economics that the Federal Reserve is the source of many problems in society, because they're essentially, well, some people call it a private bank, but it also is pretty much a communist organization in terms of its effects on the American economy. So there's been lots of critique about it from one side, let's say. Okay, some psychology. How the Mind Works by Steven Pinker. I have Steven Pinker's Language Instinct, and I have his Blank Slate. And I've got another book, actually, that he wrote. I think he wrote a preface for or something. It's about writing. It's about literacy, children's literacy. But here's another one of his big ones, like the blank slate's a big one too, How the Mind Works. So you may know Steven Pinker is a great popular science writer. He's a very good writer. He's got great stuff out there. So there's just another one to add to my library. All right, I finally found this one. I've been looking for it for a while. There's Saul Bellow. That's the author. The book is called Herzog. This is I believe it's about a person who writes letters to people. And I'll read you a little bit of it, which I thought was interesting, to get you a taste of what the book is like. But I believe it's supposed to be a story, but he does a lot of commentary and talks about issues. So I'll just read you this one here. Man has a nature, but what is it? Those who have confidently described it, Hobbes, Freud, etc., by telling us what we are intrinsically, are not our greatest benefactors. This is true also for Rousseau. I sympathize with Hume's attack on the introduction by the romantics of perfection into human things, but do not like his narrow repressiveness either. Modern science, least bothered with the definition of human nature, knowing only the activity of investigation, achieves its profoundest results through anonymity, recognizing only the brilliant functioning of intellect. Such truth as it finds may be nothing to live by, but perhaps a moratorium on definitions of human nature is now best. So that's his conclusion. And of course, you can argue about that. Human nature, you think that we would need some definition of human nature, or what is human nature if it has no definition? And isn't the human nature very important when we talk about ethics, for example? So, because if we're going to come up with some way of how to live, how should a person live? That's the fundamental question of ethics, how to live. The next question is how to live with others. But the first question is how to live. What does a human being need to survive in this world? If there's no human nature, there's no definition, then ethics becomes a problem, because what do we base ethics on? So, anyways, I think this might be a good one to go through. Alrighty. In Defense of Elitism. This is by William A. Henry III, hardcover. And I was interested in the topic, in defense of elitism. Well, because it's interesting. Obviously, history has seen a lot of corruption with individuals running society like dictators. At the same time, the other extreme is democracy, where the mob rules. As long as the majority votes yes, whatever is done is moral and right. And some people believe that. Some people believe that ethics comes from number of majority. The majority rules. The majority is the right or the correct or the true. So that's the other side of that's democracy. That's that side. And so I was curious how this person would argue for elitism. Because in many branches of society, we do like elitism. We want our doctors to be elite. We don't want anyone to be a doctor. We want the best to be doctors, the ones that are licensed and things like that. Or I was going to say lawyers, so that's probably a bad example. There are all kinds of other areas where we want the best, and the best to rule. Even the presidents or prime ministers that we elect. Professors that make great salaries. The intellectuals in academia make great salaries, charge big tuitions, get huge government funding. Which means it's taxpayer, right? That's all funding elitism, pretty much. Funding merit, really, is what that is. And so, although a lot of people have a huge negative view of elitism, so I'm interested in how this guy argues for it, because it's tough to take a extreme position, but it's always interesting in how it's argued. Okay, this one I got for free. It was, my library sometimes throws stuff out, and this was on the shelf. Beyond the Stable State. Now, it's not about the government. It's about just change. It's talking about how can we deal with so many changes, especially in the 21st century? Change is only going to get more rapid. Technological change, sometimes social changes, cultural changes. Those are less frequent, but technology is going crazy. Like, consider people that are alive today that witnessed black and white TVs, or even before that, no TVs, and then now we have little cell phones with little tiny screens that you can click on and things like that. Play games on, flick those Angry Birds and stuff. Like, that's an amazing to go from black and white TVs to this. And I'm in my upper 20s. What am I going to witness? What was the first technology that probably the most primitive technology that I had was a Commodore, or not even a Commodore. It was, I'm not even sure what you call them. It was a computer. It was a really crappy computer with no hard drive. And I remember there's a little trash can you put stuff in to delete it, I guess. And then it's funny how they changed them from the trash can to recycle bins, just to kind of give people the indication that we are a recycling society. We don't throw things away in the trash. We recycle. It's funny how they switched all those things to the recycle bin instead of the trash can, because it used to be the trash can. What am I going to witness from going from those crappy computers to when I'm in my 80s or something? That's going to be insane. And then what are my kids, if I have kids, what are they going to witness? It's just crazy. So this book is, I guess, talking about it. It's also talking about institutions and government, as well as culture. It says Western civilization, etc. It says that normally when change happens, what occurs is a dynamic conservatism, which means they fight to remain the same. But he says that is just not going to work. Change is inevitable, and it's forced upon us. And so how do we transform institutions, and like how are we going to deal with this stuff? And so I believe it's an academic book. So anyways, that might be interesting. All right, something I ordered off of Amazon, Carnage and Culture by Victor David Hanson. I've been meaning to get this. It's supposed to be very interesting about how warfare, I think it's about how warfare determines culture, especially the West. You may know about Jared Diamond's book called, now I'm not going to remember what it's called. His famous book where he says that civilizations like the West and the East and etc. in Africa, those are determined by their environment. And I think he makes one claim about animals that can be trained and used for human purposes. They don't exist in Africa. So then when the human race migrated out of Africa and went into Europe and the Middle East, they started finding animals that can be, it's supposed to be animal husbandry, but I don't know if you can say to husband an animal. It doesn't make sense, but you can essentially tame the animals and train them to be for use. But it seems ridiculous to me, because apparently the closest animal that in Africa that you could possibly try to tame would be a water buffalo for use of like pulling stuff and carrying stuff. But apparently water buffalo are vicious and impossible to train. But it just reminds me, the ancient Greeks used oxen with horns, and like they're bulls. You're telling me that they're less aggressive than water buffalo? It seems ridiculous to me. So I don't really buy that one part of Jared Diamond's argument. But anyways, I think it's not called Collapse, is it? No, I think it was another book he did. Oh, I'm not going to remember, but I'm sure most of you probably know what book I'm talking about. I just can't think of the title. Alrighty, we've got one more, and then I'm on fiction. Picked this up. This was free as well from my library. Reclaiming the Ivory Tower. Organizing adjuncts to change higher education. The reason I picked this up is because I might be one of these someday. An adjunct professor is a person who's part-time and usually teaches in the undergrad area of university. They don't get paid very well. They get paid by the course. They don't get any benefits that I know of. They're not full-time. They don't get a salary. They just get paid by the course. And I know that they're being more and more and more used because of the economic situation. And I don't know if it's the same in the States, or in the UK. I guess most of my viewers are either in the US or in the UK. But I know in Canada they're withdrawing funding from the universities, and so universities are cutting back, and they're using more limited duties. Limited duties, same as adjunct profs versus full-time profs. And so I guess I'm just curious what he's going to say about that. The only way to really get your foot in the door in a university is you sit and be part-time for a while, and you get paid by the course, which kind of sucks. But so I guess that book might be a preview of what's to come. So